is the 1922 Palm Beach High School, Palm Beach High School, which was built by William Manley King. We're going to talk all about the school across the street and many of his other designs, but I wanted to go ahead and clear that up. And while we're looking at the cover of the book, you might be wondering why it's called Sunlit Arches. So I am a big believer in crowdsourcing. I have a couple different pages on Facebook, and I let the people pick. So I let them pick which picture got on the front cover, and I also had them choose from some different titles, and they overwhelmingly picked Sunlit Arches. And now that I've done that, I can't stop seeing them. And maybe that will happen to you as you drive home or walk home today. I'm going to bring you back into the 1990s. So we're going to flash back all the way to 1996. And why, you might wonder. 1996 was a year that basically changed my life. Here in Boynton Beach, we were building a playground. I don't know if anyone remembers the Let's Build a Playground project. I see some hands that went up. So that was a community-built playground. It was designed by Leathers and Associates, and I volunteered. So volunteering gets you somewhere, right? While we were doing that, we had food and tools that were being stored in two different buildings. One of them was the 1913 elementary school, which is now restored into the Schoolhouse Children's Museum and Learning Center. So that's the playground here. Looking back at it now, I think it really was a prophecy because you'll see that there are sunlit arches right there in the playground design. Or was the playground designed around the 1927 school that was right next door? So when you look at this picture, you might not see much. We do have some people that attended school there. If you attended school, please raise your hand, or if you taught school there. All right, yes, so we have a former teacher in the back, and she brought some wonderful pictures. So while we're storing the tools there in the building, I'm looking around. There's kind of a dank smell in there. The paint is crumbling. Some of the tiles are broken. And it's not in very good condition, but I kept looking around and I thought, this is not your ordinary school. There's something really special about this. There's something really special about the design. So despite it not being in its glory, I could see the different columns, I could see the parapets, I could see the crest, I could see the symmetry of the different windows and the arches. And inside, it had so much possibility. So once new schools were built, and they were built up to code, the county pretty much gave away the old schools. So you'll notice that many of the old schools ended up with municipalities. So Boynton received both of these schools. We're going to look back at a little bit of the glory days so you can see it a little bit better. And again, it was built when you were just getting lighting. It was a new thing. It was built by a person named William Manley King that we'll learn more about. But when you think about the designs, they designed it for airflow. They designed it for light to be able to come in. Every part of it was masterfully thought about and not just thrown together. It had a purpose. So it was designed in 1926 and it opened in 1927, and Florida was amid a great big boom during this time. There were houses, new developments, hotels, casinos, all kinds of things that were springing up. And of course, they needed new schools. The closest school, high school, was in West Palm Beach. So the Boynton kids had to take the train, the Florida East Coast Railroad, down to the school. So they were finally able to get this beautiful school built, and the next year we were hit with the hurricane of 1928. It destroyed so many buildings and killed so many people all through Okeechobee and in the Glades, Lake Worth, and Boynton. Nobody was killed in Boynton, but the roof of this new building was severely damaged. Once it was restored, again, these are happier times. These images are from 1949. This was the last year that that school operated as a high school. And this is one of my favorite images in the whole wide world. Some people would say, those were the days, my friend. But then, what happened over the years was it was used for some different purposes. It was used for an elementary and junior high school. It was used for a special school. And then once Boynton acquired it, the building sat. And once buildings are sitting, they begin to deteriorate. A little water leak here, maybe some mold here, peeling paint. And by the 2010s, this is what the building was starting to look like. Some people thought it was an eyesore. Some people thought it was just in the way. Some people thought it was really special because they had emotional attaches to it. But other people had a vision and said, you know what? This old building could be restored into something that the community could use. It's got style that you don't see. The city commission at that time was not impressed, and a committee formed, and a historic preservation ad hoc committee was formed, led by Barbara Reedy, who's there in the back row. And many people stepped up to say, let's not knock that down. The commission had voted to actually knock it down. There was tape all around the building, but there was an outcry. This was a building that could be the anchor for all of downtown. So we banded together. And you can see from this picture that we had people of all different walks of life, young and old, come together. The Historic Trust put it on its most endangered list. It got the attention of a local architect who is very experienced with historic preservation. We started to say, she might be old, but just like an old person, this place, this person still matters. You can even see here they have the gravestones. So we weren't sure what was going to happen. It was slated for demolition. But then this person, who might walk in the door any minute, he heard about what was going on, and he talked to the commission, and they gave him 30 days to come up with a plan. Because he said, I've done it before, this can happen, there's money out there, we're experienced. Other schools like this have been repurposed, and there's a whole thing of repurposing old buildings. So he was able to come up with a plan, and in the plan he said, we could have classrooms here for art students, we could have dances, we can use that auditorium for art shows. And they did. Over $10 million, and a couple of years later, the building was fully restored, all the way down to removing all of the asbestos. any kind of termites, any kind of mold, recreating the embellishments just like they were, recreating the windows to be hurricane safe, but to look like the old ones. And this is how it looked when it was finished. Has anyone been there? Yes, it's an amazing place. You can still hear the footsteps of the children that ran through those hallways and climbed the stairs. And you can go there, and I'm inviting everyone to go to our art show, February 7th. The Boynton Beach Historical Society is holding a free art show there, so you can go in and see the restored gymnatorium. So the gymnatorium was a stage at the front for the auditorium, and then they would have the gym classes in there too, so multi-purposing. My husband and I are going to a candlelight concert there in a couple of weeks. That you do pay for that, but again, this is bringing culture to our city. It's so much fun. A little back note that I just feel compelled to tell is that this moment volunteering at that school or at that playground, it actually changed my life, because that same year I got hired to work at the library part-time. I ended up becoming the city of Boynton Beach's first archivist. I met my husband, who's there in the back row. I ended up getting 2 master's degrees and writing 10 books. So when you say libraries matter and libraries bring people together, I'm definitely a living example of that. But that brings us to the question that you're all probably wondering, who was William Manley King? Who's heard of him? Like just a little bit. It's like in school, their hands go up, but nobody's like that, right? Well, that's why I ended up writing this book and doing all this research, because he was not well known like this person. Who's that person? Addison Meisner. So Addison Meisner was a Palm Beach society architect. He did beautiful things. He did the Everglades Club. He did huge, expensive mansions. He only worked here from 2018 to 2028. His works in Palm Beach County numbered less than 75. But, like you know in life, some people just get all the credit. So, a little bit of background on William Manley King, and I'll do this kind of quickly because I want to get to all of the cool pictures that I want to share with you. So he was a Southerner. He was born in Macon, Mississippi. His father was an inventive kind of person. This is a small country town. It's shortly after the end of the Civil War. There's one railroad, but he starts working with opening a power plant, and then he opens an ice house. And what this did was this allowed air conditioning in those hot summers. So William Manley King took notice and thought about this. How do buildings work? How can we make things cooler? His mother was a milliner, so she made hats and sold them and made dresses, as was his sister. Around 1905, they moved. They moved to Birmingham. So they moved to Birmingham, Alabama, which was just starting to take off. Some people call that the the Pittsburgh of the South, because of the industry and everything that was going on at that time. They sent him over to boarding school. They sent him to Stone Mountain Boarding School near Atlanta, and it was there where he got an excellent education. You think of those really stringent schools where you have to have 4 years of a language, plus 4 years of Latin, 4 years of mathematics, 4 years of penmanship. Do they teach that anymore? Right? So he knew how to draw. Then he was in one of the first classes when they opened South Tech Institute. So Georgia Technical Institute, yes, let's say that again. Georgia Technical Institute, which now we just call Georgia Tech. So he's there, and he's taking drafting, he's going there, and this is where he built the skill to become an apprentice. So he meets his wife, goes back to Birmingham, he works with noted architects. One of the architects that he worked with, they built a jail, and the jail was a multi-story jail, and it made front page news when the offenders broke out, and it turns out they didn't use the right steel in the bars. So lesson learned. Those are the things, the difference between a draftsman who might draw and write up the plans and an architect is different, because the architect has to figure out all of the materials. They have to deal with the contracts. They have to supervise, so it's much more complex. But he built a Rainbow Viaduct Bridge, which is still there in Birmingham, and he also started his own business with a partner. Now, he had a sister-in-law, and his sister-in-law moved to Florida. And guess where she moved? She moved to West Palm Beach, and she became the head of that West Palm Beach grammar school. So there's just a little ad for University School of Boys. I really had to track that down because I didn't believe it existed. You have to have evidence. Oh, and some of the things that he did in Birmingham was he organized architects. So they did a group of Beaux-Arts studies so that they trained other architects. They got together. He belonged to the AIA there. He got his license. And then the lure of the sun got him. So in 1921, in May, he opened up his practice here in West Palm Beach. On that same day, the other noted architects, Harvey and Clark, opened their business in the same building. This is what West Palm Beach looked like about that time. This is Clematis Avenue, which today we call Clematis Boulevard. Its pronunciation changed because of our strange dialects, and then they also changed the name of it. One of the very first things that he did once he was here was he built something which is called a comfort station. What do you think a comfort station would be? Restrooms. It was restrooms for the ladies. So this is the progressive era, and they're doing things to improve people's lives. So I had to look up what that was because I had no idea what a women's comfort station was. The next big project that he did was something which was called Kelsey City. So Harry Kelsey was a visionary from Boston, and you had West Palm, which was quite small at that time, but during this big land boom, people were coming up with these schemes and these ideas to make things bigger, make things better. So he invested everything that he had into a town that he named after himself. Does anyone know what Kelsey City is called today? Lake Park, right. So the development, while it was built and many things were built, there was a school, there was a church, there were several houses, there were streets paved because of the great bust. You know, what goes up must come down. It ended up not really being successful and they renamed it. But here's an ad for it, and I really like this because William Manley King was the person who designed all of the initial buildings, and they called it symmetry in design. In other words, not just throwing up a shack here, throwing up a big building here, but making them all match in the kind of style. So this was before his real Mediterranean revival buildings, in a more simple Spanish mission style. And some of these buildings are still around. This is the gate for Kelsey City. Gates and arches, you will see, will be a recurring theme throughout the book and the presentation. So one of the things that they did in Kelsey City was a lot like what Addison Meisner did with his Meisner Industries. They said, you know what, we need the materials now. The building boom is now, and we can't wait for some supply chain and things to get here. So they opened up a plant where they made the different materials. They would crush the stone. They would make different ornamentals. They would have things prefabbed. So we know Meisner did it first, but they also did it in Kelsey City, and what a smart idea. And you can hire local craftsmen. They would bring the clay down from Georgia. This is still there. That's the Kelsey City Elementary from 1922, designed by William Manley King in Lake Park. This is that high school there that he built in 1922 in West Palm Beach. Does anyone know what that high school that was built in 1922 in West Palm Beach serves as today? The Dreyfus School of Arts. So there's several buildings on that campus, and he built at least 5 of them. 2 of them are gone, and some still remain. This gate here, which we'll see a more close-up of, which is on Sapodilla, he also built that. Of note, the school here, which was the 1908 school, was built by the same person, William Mifflin Jr., who built our 1913 school. So again, there's lots of parallels here. The tower blew off in the 1928 hurricane. And there you get a little close-up of this. And again, the buildings with all of this symmetry, the different arches, the red clay roofs, just lovely. And it's so nice to think that people stepped up and saved this. They could have demolished it, but instead that huge campus is now raising up many young people who go on into the arts. But it didn't always look like that. It was getting a little dilapidated back in the 70s and 80s. It served as Twin Lakes High School. The next development I want to tell you about is Northwood. So if you think of West Palm Beach as being central, then you have Northwood to the north of it, the North Borough, so people that are used to thinking of things in boroughs, and then South Borough, which is what we call now south of Southern. So these new developments were coming up in a Pinewood development group, which our area here was so much pine woods, they didn't just spin a wheel and pick the name. They named it after real geographical features there. So much like Lake Kelsey City, here you have, and this is the early 1920s, again you have Northwood, the harmony in design. The houses are a little bit different. You'll see right here, they're advertising, and boy, did they know how to advertise in the 1920s. You've heard of sometimes the dealers and the schemers, and they would do anything they could to try to get people to come out and sign up to have a new house built. So here they're building some magnificent houses. This is going to cost over $20,000, which is a pretty good chunk of change during that time. They also built, he did quite a bit of pro bono or charity work. His wife was a Girl Scout leader and his daughter a Girl Scout, so he built or designed this house that they auctioned off, and the local merchants created the bedding and the decorating and the wallpaper and everything like that, and it sold for over $10,000 in 1923. Carl Riddle, you may have heard of him. This is one of Carl Riddle's house. The most famous Carl Riddle house is the one that's out at the South Florida Fairgrounds that some people claim is haunted. Again, this house that sold for $10,000 in 1924, this is a 1937 advertisement. 2-story, Spanish-type house with tile and built-up roof, attractive, recessed front entrance, big screen porch facing south and east. Once again, that's for that ventilation. We complain how hot it is, but if you know how to build a house and it's not surrounded by concrete, it's going to be a lot cooler. 3 bedrooms, art stone fireplace, yes, but it sold for a little bit less because that was the Depression. That's this house today.
Wow.
So it's wonderful that these old houses exist. I've identified the ones that I know in the back of my book, but I know that there's more out there. Some of these things I'll find in trade magazines and journals on sites like Internet Archive, Hot Thief Trust, and places that are not just plain Google or plain newspapers.com. But I love this shot because you actually get a little interior shot, and again, it's over $3 million. Yeah, not too bad. A little bit of profit over the years. Let's go the right way. So this is the sketch for Orrin Randolph's place. These drawings are at the Historical Society of Palm Beach County in their archives. One of William Manley King's partners, Donald Edge, before he passed away, he had the foresight to donate all kinds of drawings and blueprints to the archive. And there you'll see King's signature. And that's that house today. So again, it's really nice to see that that's there, the entryway, and this image is particularly beautiful. And this area of Northwood is known by, it used to be called Mango, or it's by Mangonia. So they used to grow mangoes there, hence the neighborhood. The Northwood Hotel. So he started building all kinds of hotels, not just schools, not just houses. Hotels, apartment buildings, civic buildings, hospitals. Over the years, a huge, wide variety of things. So who knows where Northwood is? Okay, do you recognize this building? Yeah, so this building still exists right there on the corner. At the time, built for about $500,000. Again, this was the boom time. People were excited. Prosperity was the thing. Everything was going to be prosperous and good forever, right? It got just a little bit seedy looking over time. You can see that the sign was still there, above there. But Northwood became West Palm Beach's first historic district. Again, people started to take notice, take inventory. Look, how old are things? It only has to be 50 years or more for something to be considered for a local historic register. So they put the entire road as a historic district, and this is what the building looked like in 2015. It actually looks a little bit different today because they painted it blue with blue trim. So I like this picture a little bit better. Again, it's kind of repurposed. You can eat there. Okay, this house. So this house is Ginger, this isn't the one with the poster, right?
It is.
It is, okay. I had the poster, and I'm not sure where the poster went, but I have a 1940s enlarged post picture of what this house looked like. So this house is in West Palm Beach. The address is 229 10th Street. This is the interior of it. You can go online and see probably 60 pictures that they put when they were selling it. This house sold for over $8 million. And this house is slated for demolition. Yeah, so, you know, when private people or when people purchase properties, there's really no recourse, that it's theirs to do as they want. So I imagine it's a large lot and they want something bigger and better. So it's sad to see something like this go. I hope that they salvage it, as much of the materials that they can, and that the preservation board, you know, photographs it and measures it, at least for old time's sake. Mm-hmm. And that's the side building there. Most of these houses that he built, they also would have a garage, attached garage, carriage house garage, and then they would have apartments above with bathrooms. So very nicely appointed. So we're gonna come into this hotel phase. This is the Hotel Monterey. This was in West Palm Beach, near where the high school is, and they called it the Hotel on the Hill because, again, if you look at the Atlantic coastal ridge in some of those areas, like even right here, we have Mission Hill, Chapel Hill, High Ridge Road, Grandview Heights. Those were all built just a little bit higher. Again, advertising for Hotel Monterey, La Florida. This was the time also where they started having landscape architects. So not only were things planned with symmetry and design and harmony, but you would hire a landscaper to actually plan all of this out. And they were very well trained in bringing in the flowers and everything.
What year was that?
That was built in, I believe it was 1923. So by the mid-20s, they started to need the housing for these people that were coming down prospecting, or people that were cleaning, or the construction workers, and they would stay in the different hotels. It was also the beginning of big tourism. So you have these hotels that have air conditioning. People want to come and check it out. So again, a rendezvous of tropical smartness and all of the things that you can do down here. Good Chamber of Commerce moment. So there's the Hotel Monterey over the years. I have a postcard collection that numbers over 1,200 postcards. So that's where I get some of my research and my images from, because people didn't take pictures like we do, pulling it out every 2 minutes. This is the sketch. So these are at the Historical Society of Palm Beach County. It's ink on vellum, and it actually shows the entire floor plan as well as the window schedule. So if you think about it, all of these things that had to be coordinated. You drew the picture, or the draftsman drew the picture, or the plans. That's not it. There's a lot more work involved. Boynton. So did you know that after the Boynton Hotel was raised, which was on the beach in 1924, they had really big plans for Boynton. They were going to build high-rises. They were going to build resort hotels right on the beach. So this is his sketch for the proposed Boynton Hotel. The old Boynton Hotel was wooden. These new hotels were made out of concrete block or hollow type. His partner was Kenneth Campbell. Kenneth Campbell doesn't get a lot of credit. I've been trying to contact his descendants as well. He scooted back to Canada after the 1928 hurricane. So that's why there's not that much about Kenneth Campbell. I thought you might like to see this. This was a caricature that was in the Palm Beach Post. They featured prominent men once a week, and this helped me to learn a little bit more about William Manly King. So you can see his hobbies. He liked bass fishing, watching football games, And when it says miniature portrait painting, I finally, 2 weeks before my book went to print, met up with the grandson. And he showed me these portraits that are about this big, like a big locket, that were sorry, my accent, that they were printed, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. It's amazing to see those things. But this gave me some clues, because at the time I had the newspaper article or the picture, but I was like, Monterey Hotel, check. Royal Denali Hotel, what is that? I can't find that. And it turned out that it became the Mayflower Hotel. So I had to backtrack and look, because things obviously changed names over the years. Again, it said that he was vice president of the Florida Association of Architects. He was very involved. So today might be a nice day to go to the beach. Besides doing things in West Palm Beach and in Boynton and other areas, he also branched out. He did do things in Palm Beach. So this is the pier at Gus's Baths. And he did this hotel called Hotel Billows. Do you know where that was at? That was, if you've ever been to Palm Beach where there's the clock tower, it's right across the street from there. Prime real estate. So people would go to the beach, they would come here, there'd be little ice cream shops. All the first floor had shops, hotel on the second and upper floors. And they would bring in the band, they would have an orchestra almost every night. And what was really special about this hotel that was different than Henry Flagler's hotels and some of the other hotels that were there was that this hotel was open year-round, because it was designed with air conditioning. People could go there year-round. It's a big thing. This is it over the years. And here you have the Hotel Mayflower. Let me see if I'm skipping one. Okay, so sorry. So there's the Hotel Billows. This is the Royal Denali. The Royal Denali was on the Lake Trail. So it was on the Lake Trail in Palm Beach, so that's facing West Palm Beach from the other side, and right next to the Beaux-Arts Plaza. And that was the one that became the Hotel Mayflower. Oh, apartments. As I mentioned with these apartments, Hibiscus Apartments, when this was built, this was a very big deal, and people were excited for it. You could rent an apartment, and most people would rent it by the month. Again, it was at 1619 Hibiscus Street. You'll see it over the years. The ornamentals up here, another signature of William Manley King, the parapets, the scuppers, and the ornamentation over the windows. Another one of the postcards. So there's another hotel that I always passed this building and I didn't know about its past, and it was called the Leomar. So the Leomar was on Olive. So this was designed in 1924. Again, they needed this housing. They were desperate for housing for all of the people that were influxing to South Florida. So when I show you this, a couple of you are going to say, yeah, I've driven by and I've seen that. So again, another one of his pictures. This is from Google Earth from just a couple of years ago. This has been repurposed. Again, adaptive reuse. So instead of it being a hotel, it's an office building. The El Cid Apartment Hotel. So you have that nice community of El Cid. They had an apartment hotel that was there, and it was very large. And that one, I'm happy to say, still exists. It was recently done about 5 years ago by Wilshire Pacific. They came in and they did the interior, they did the exterior, but what they didn't do was they didn't sacrifice the different motifs and shields and things that adorned the building. Branching out. Hey, someone in Sebring wants to develop it into a huge metropolis because Sebring, while it's kind of located in the middle of the state, you have the Atlantic Ocean on one side, you have the you have the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, not quite the Pacific. And you have railroads now, so you have all of these different railroads that are crisscrossing. People are driving automobiles freely. So once again, this is a vision. So two West Palm Beach men got together. One had the vision, one had the bucks. And they said, you know what, let's make it Lakewood Terraces. So they hired William Manley King to build a hotel, a community club, and a bunch of houses and offices and buildings. And this is what the finished product looked like. So this is Harder Hall. And can I ask if anyone has ever heard of Harder Hall? So it was very opulent. You could see that it looks like it's larger than the Breakers, right on a lake with a huge expanse of land, golfing. Here's a close-up of it over the years. More signature arches. Beautiful cloisters and gardens. So this building started to fall apart and lose popularity. There was a time about 15 years ago when I drove by, I was with my friend Ginger, and we were going through Sebring, and we're like, what is that? You could see it from way far away. It was this huge area. We tried to get closer. It's all closed up. What the heck, right? So this is what it looked like. Pretty much done, abandoned. So somebody tried to rehabilitate it. They put a lot of money in it, a lot of elbow grease, and then it ended up dormant. You know, sometimes there's red tape, city ordinances, different things don't always go as planned. But you can definitely see the potential, despite it being boarded up. So these were from one of my friends that does urban photography, took these pictures. But this is today. About 3 years ago, another man with a vision and with some money, Robert Blackman, decided this old girl has potential. You might see the lines in the faces. You might see things start to sag, but you know that there's a great carriage underneath. When a building has good bones, it can be saved, it can be rehabilitated. So they started to pump money into it, recreate all of the different things. You can see this one has a beautiful tower. These were imported from Italy. And they've been working and working on it and facing some more red tape. So I've been following them. If you look at Historic Harder Hall on Facebook, you'll see week by week, play by play. It's been up, it's been down. Once again, red tape sometimes slows things down, but we're really hopeful that in just a short time that we'll be able to have a grand opening, and I want to be there. Now, Palm Beach, again, this is Royal Palm Way in Palm Beach. They say that William Manley King created several of the buildings and the storefronts on there, but the only one that they're sure of is this one. So this was Chuck and Harold's. You might recognize the facade there. It was Johnny and somebody's, right, after that. But that's still there, and that's on the Palm Beach landmark. This is on the campus of the Society of Four Arts. This is their education building. It was built in 1929 as Palm Beach Junior High. There's a funny story about this, that it went over price and the contractors packed up and left. Yeah, so William Manley King had to renegotiate the contract, look with the insurer, file a claim, and finally get it going again. You know why? It was 1929. Yes, so the start of the Great Depression. This is symbolic of some of the different schools that he did. They say that he did over 90% of all of the schools in Palm Beach County between 1920 and 1950. Does that look familiar? That's the Jupiter School. So the Jupiter School has similarities to the Boynton School, obviously, but it's not the same. You can see that same pole out in front. This one has some Juliet balconies and some other elements that is there. You see our beautiful sugar sand that we have here. That school still exists, by the way. Once again, adaptive reuse is why that is still there. This here is a little school in Lantana. This was also built in 1929. Mary Lyman, who was the wife of the Lantana founder, M.B. Lyman, gave the land for the school, so it was the Lantana Hypoluxo School. It's still there. So it's still used for educational purposes right there in the middle of Lantana. Palm Beach Junior College still has a building that William Manley King designed. He designed this in 1927 as the vocational building on the campus of what we call the School of the Arts. So this is how it looked at the beginning, and today they have their foundation there. Oops, the other way. Okay. Now, you know that they don't all make it. Right now, the Pahokee School, which once again has good bones, has a lot of potential, it sits there vacant. People have had their visions, have wanted to make it certain things, and it has yet to happen. The school at South Bay is gone, which was similar to these schools as well. But let's get back to Boynton Beach. I didn't come here till 1987, so I missed seeing the Boynton Casino, but some of you have been there. Who's been to the Boynton Casino? All right, so we have at least one person. So when they say casino, we all think gambling, right? But it was a term for just socializing that they would go to. You would have dances, you would have parties, you could promenade and go around. So think of the Lake Worth Casino. There was the Palm Beach Casino, but these were recreational areas. So after the Boynton Hotel was gone, the city acquired some land over on the beach. In retrospect, we wish they acquired more land over on the beach. But William Manley King designed this casino. So it had open rafters up here. These were not enclosed. These were the men's and women's shower rooms. You couldn't do that today. Not with drones and everything else. And I have some other wonderful pictures of it. You can see how wide and how nice the beach was. And it was actually several different buildings with this casino. You can see that there was no houses over here. Just imagine what it would have been like on your Sunday drive. There was supposed to be a pool. In fact, it was all mapped out as part of the complex, but it ended up going over budget and they weren't able to do it. Again, the buildings were kind of simple, but with some stylistic elements, but so close to the beach. And this is where our oceanfront park is today. So the casino operated from 1928 until about 1967, which is why I didn't get a chance to go. And when it was gone, and even today, it's one of those things that people really, I don't want to say cry about, but reminisce about and wish that it was there. Again, these were the days, my friend. We also realized that you can't save every single building. At the time, I'm not sure if the city fathers knew who William Manley King is. Most people didn't. And so no efforts were made for that. It did survive the 1947 hurricane. And then, we talked about Meisner at the very beginning. And in 1933, Addison Meisner passed away. He had already been insolvent. And his Meisner Industries was sold to someone. And William Manley King acquired Meisner Architects. So they consolidated, and they had offices in Via Meisner. So there really is a Addison Meisner and William Manley King connection. I'm not sure if this picture is going to look familiar to anyone. So these are the gates at the town of Gulfwood, which is sort of near Palm Beach International Airport. The town does not exist anymore, but the gates do, and they've been moved somewhere here in Palm Beach County. I know a couple of you have read the book, so you know, but I didn't. I walked through these gates dozens of times, and I didn't know that they were designed by William Manley King. So if you go to the South Florida Fair, and it's only fitting that it's at Yesteryear Village, you will see his name over there. And I just got a kick out of that because, like I said, I know these things are right beneath our eyes, and we don't even see them, or people don't even know who designed their home or their building. This. So in the 1930s, he did a lot of things that had to do with the New Deal. So it's the Depression. They have to figure out how to put people back to work. How can they improve the infrastructure? So under the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, they had all these different programs like the Works Progress Administration, WPA, the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And this project in West Palm Beach, the National Guard Armory, employed local labor. You can see this building was made out of hollow tile. You start to see some stylistic elements. This building still exists. Who knows what this building is? You can tell I teach, right? I know. I have to ask questions. It is. So while it was used for the National Guard Armory, once it became used for just West Palm Beach programming and for trade shows and things, people got the idea, let's save this building, and it's so Art Deco. Sharon Koskoff and other people said, let's have this restored, put on the National Register, and made into the Robert and Mary Montgomery Historic Armory Building. So you can still go in there, and it's pretty much breathtaking. And I'm not an Art Deco specialist, but it has those eyebrows, it has the armory and raised lettering and all of that good stuff. So another short story about what happened with the armory. So I told you about the labor shortage with the other building. Or no, they walked off the job with the Palm Beach Junior High, and he had to get the insurance and get a new contract. With this, it was 1938, and the workers weren't getting paid by the CCC. The program was at its final end. So, being a community member of some means and a Kiwanis, he band together all different people. So he had roofers that were local, lathers, painters. All the people came together and volunteered their time to finish it. And it was actually finished just like 6 weeks later than it was supposed to be. This is pretty neat. This belongs to, so this is in West Palm Beach, and this little snug house was designed for William Manley King's sister-in-law and her friend, and it still exists. And I came about it in the strangest way, that one of my friends, Linda Stabile, who some of you probably know, said, "My son owns a William Manley King house." And I'm like, "No, really?" So she was able to send me the floor plans, she was able to send me interior and exterior pictures, and this beautiful snug little house still exists, 1939. We don't get to see the interior of too many of the buildings, but the roofing, the details, the fireplaces, they're just all magnificent. Often use things like Peggy cypress or local materials. I like to call this the ones that got away. You know, if you're an architect, you might do a set of drawings, but there's no guarantee that it will be implemented. So these exist at the Historical Society of Palm Beach County. This was a West Palm Beach YMCA design, never done. This was his idea for the Palm Beach Yacht Club. Pretty ornate, almost Moorish in some details. Reminds me a little bit of the Gulfstream Club with that staircase. This was the Memorial Library design. So down in West Palm Beach, downtown on the lake, that's what the library would have looked like. Not done. His own house, quite modest. Apparently he had not one, but 2 drafting rooms and a room where he would meet clients, because he built above here. So this house still exists. So he built the addition there. And again, very simple, but snug and still around. We're going through the Great Depression and into the 1940s. So he started building hospitals. This is Everglades Memorial Hospital in Pahokee. Unfortunately, that didn't last the test of time. Staying out there in our western communities, Belle Glade City Hall, Art Deco, and that still exists. This building is repurposed. I believe that it has offices and children programming in it. Staying to the west, we have Pahokee, their City Hall. Some Art Deco elements, and this still exists. These buildings, some of them, this one is on the National Register, or the Florida Register, one of the registers. He built a bunch of buildings in West Palm Beach, the city of West Palm Beach, the police station, the fire station, and this was when cities didn't have the tax base and money that they have right now. So it was built in stages. He was able to figure out that you could mesh them together, so we would build one building and then build another. And if we go back to this building, you'll notice that when this was done, it only had the right side and then the fire bay for the trucks, but this whole area was added on later, and you would never really know the difference. He also did more pro bono work. So he worked with the African American churches to not only design them pro bono, but also to work with other people, carpenters, lathers, painters, and roofers, to get the materials for less. So 2 of the churches that we know of are in West Palm Beach, the Mount Zion Baptist Church and the Bethel Missionary Church. So instead of it costing $80,000, he was able to do it for $35,000. He also did a pro bono project for the Lions. So the Lions were operating a school for children, like a nursery for the school for the blind. This was right across from Howley's restaurant, if you know where that is in West Palm Beach. So once again, when I talked to his grandson said, yeah, my grandma said that he was just too generous. Moving out, over in Orlando, he built several different buildings for the Adventists. So this is a building, and again, you'll see the drawing. This is about the early 1950s. He was just starting to work with Donald Edge at that time. What was really special about this particular building was this is what's known as Dr. Phillips Hospital. So during a time of segregation, African Americans had to go to a different hospital. Their hospital was small, it was crowded. So he built this beautiful hospital with that great ventilation and nice bright rooms. And so here you'll see him. He is in the center right here at the groundbreaking. And here is the dedication. And there's pages and pages in the newspaper of this event because it was such a, no pun intended, groundbreaking event. And that's what the hospital looked like. This is something new that I didn't know, but he also built dormitories. So up at Florida State University. So this was in the 1950s, and a lot of you might not know this, but Florida State was originally all girls school, segregated all girls, and University of Florida was a men's school. So when they started to expand and allow men to come to the school, they had to build dormitories. So he built a couple sets of dormitories up there. The archivist at the school was not able to produce anything that had his name on it, but I got these things from a newspaper article. So I'm still waiting for more to appear. Some newspaper articles said that he also did dormitories at University of Florida, and I imagine they probably look much like this. So up there in Orlando, he also did Forest Lake apartments. So if you look around, sometimes you might see designs, and even though we haven't confirmed it, that some of the designs may have been William Manley King. So we're just about at the end of our presentation, but you can see more modern things. Sometimes we think of Mediterranean revival, we think of Art Deco, but these are in the 1950s. One of his last projects up there, Palm Beach Shores. So you can see what these houses look like, and several of these houses still exist. In 2015, King was honored by the Palm Beach Architect Association, and he received this award. So I was really glad to see that. The Historical Society of Palm Beach County accepted it on his behalf, and they proudly keep that in their archives. Something you might not know about me, I'm a little bit quirky because I give cemetery tours. So I give guided cemetery tours of Woodlawn Cemetery, which is in West Palm Beach across from the Norton. So when I looked on Find a Grave, and I found out that William Manley King was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery, I was really excited. I was like, how could I have missed it? Well, there's 10,000 people interred there. I guess you could miss it. So I looked up the plot, and I went there, and this is what I saw. I had expected some kind of a grand monument, that he might have done something really intricate, something that looked like his, but he and the rest of his family, 6 members of his extended family, are all buried in unmarked graves. So on the back of my book, I have just a couple little things that try to express what I'm trying to express to others. I wrote this book as a monument to him. He doesn't have a monument in Woodlawn Cemetery, but architecture tells a story of a place. It reflects the values, ambitions, and circumstances of the people who design it and call it home. In Florida, where rapid growth often erases old buildings before their stories can be told, much of that history is too easily lost. And I think most of you can agree with that. And this is the cover of the book, and I'd like to introduce the person who wrote the foreword for my book. So Rick, would you come up here? So Rick Gonzalez has been working as an architect and Florida's premier preservation person. And he was kind enough when I asked him to write the foreword for the book. So I'm very indebted to Rick.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to work with Janet. There are very few people like Janet in Florida, right? And especially here in Boynton Beach and West Palm Beach, right? And I was also very interested because I've done several adaptive reuse of Mr. King's buildings. The Belgrade City Hall that you just showed, we turned that, it was a historic tax credit, which was very nice because they got money back from the federal government. And they did a daycare center, a Mexican restaurant, and apartments upstairs on Main Street in Belgrade. Belgrade's a city that's not done very well, but you know, they're trying. And of course, the old high school across the street, the Art and Culture Center here, one of our most proud projects that we have in our office, having worked here in Boynton Beach and at the old school next door where the Children's Museum is. And the Army Art Center in West Palm Beach is another one. But I use his buildings all the time. I live in the north side of downtown West Palm Beach, and there's a little Mexican restaurant on the building in Northwood Road that we go to all the time, the 3-story apartment building. So I didn't know that was his building until I saw it in Janet's book, right? So now it's kind of great to go there. I'm looking for his house. I haven't found his house in Northwood, but I need to go one of these days, drive over there and take a look at that, right? Because it's an amazing architect, and he didn't get what he was due, in my opinion, right? I mean, we have a lot of famous architects from the 20s here. Meisner, who did the Women's Club, and Facio and others, you know. And so thank you, Janet, for bringing attention to somebody that has done a lot of good, you know. And you mentioned the pro bono work. He reminds me of my father, Ricardo, who did the Martin Luther King Memorial in West Palm Beach pro bono for the city of West Palm Beach for African American community too, right? So it's great. It's really great, and I really appreciate you allowing me to help you with the book.
You missed the part where I showed your picture and called you the savior that had the plan for the high school. Okay, I think they changed the time.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
sorry I'm late.
It was originally posted as that. All right, so that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for being such a good audience. I'll be around if you have any questions. I do have some books available if you're interested. The library and the archives also has a copy too, so don't feel that you're obligated to purchase anything. Thank you.